we're seeing here is sweet potato ice cream with a red bean paste. As a guy who usually hates sweet potatoes of all kinds, this is pretty good. But I mean, ice cream makes everything better, so. By the way, the part of town that I'm currently in is called Kappa Bashi. Those things are kappas, and they have motif for them pretty much everywhere. Like, there's a kappa, there's a kappa. I just wanna, if I just walk down the street, more kappa. It's just like this for a while. So, that's something. I can't tell if that's Betty Boop or just a really sexy kappa. I don't know. So sorry for the huge intermission. I haven't uploaded anything in a while, and I guess a large part of that was just because, number one, I wasn't really moving anywhere, wasn't really doing much, so it didn't really seem like there would be much to show you guys. And second was just, again, getting caught in my own head, getting caught in the same loop, same vicious cycle of, hey, here's an idea, do something with that idea. It's like, okay, but let me think about that idea even more. And, well, you know, nothing happened because it didn't do anything. And so I ended up catching a trip back to Tokyo. Mostly just because there's more things to do, there's more opportunity, there's more things to show people, and there's more ability to network with other people who are also potentially on the same wavelength that I am. So there's that. I'll keep you guys updated on how things like that go. And in the meantime, I'm going to be talking about a book, because why not? Hopefully I'll be able to just get into a cadence of talking at least about books or information that I find interesting, just so I don't drop off the face of the earth again, even if I feel like there's nothing for me to say. Because there's always something to say. It's YouTube. Clog the internet with more unnecessary clutter. That's what this is all about. In the meantime, though, the book that I'm going to be talking about is one called A Slight Edge. It's written by a guy named Jeff Olson. The main point, if nothing else, can be summed up in the concept of compound interest. You know, the old parable of the tortoise beating the hare by slow, incremental gains made consistently over time. It's not the slowness per se, but the consistency. I think he says something along the lines of extraordinary effort really just requires consistency, because being consistent is extraordinary. Even if I completely made that up, that's still generally what he's arguing. And the biggest one that comes to mind immediately is, I guess, number one, just like the whole parable, analogy, whatever, of the two brothers. The first one ends up getting a lump sum of $1 million from their deceased father. The second one gets a penny that ends up magically doubling every day. The first brother gets screwed over by like investment bankers, lawyers, fees, taxes, because that's a huge sum at once, and you got to do something with it. Give it to other people who say they know what they're doing better than you do. But second, and more to the point of the actual story, the other brother, he ends up developing it over time. And number one, he's able to use it more effectively. And number two, yeah, I guess that's it. He gets more of it, and it keeps growing perpetually over time, because it's not just one lump sum thing. That sort of mentality being applied throughout the entire book. throughout your entire life. One of the major things that I found interesting, it's kind of redundant because if you're in the self-help field at all, you've heard the classic Think and Grow Rich. He quotes that book as, and also As a Man Thinketh, as really sort of manifestations of it, because thoughts underlie actions. What you think ends up creating your reality. Here, let me give you an example instead of sounding all woo-woo. The main thing that he ends up arguing is people tend to live on autopilot. The mind is really good at taking specific steps, procedures, and making them automatic. You get into your car to go to work. You recall sticking your key into the ignition, turning it, and pulling out of the driveway. After that, your mind goes wherever it goes. And after a while, you look up and, oh, you're at work. Do you remember the commute? Not really. Do you remember the songs that were playing? What you were thinking even? No, not really. Your mind just sort of took that process of getting from point A to point B and pretty much automated all the steps in between. Why is that important? Because that's basically how people go throughout their life. The mind takes these processes and batches them into steps where a lot of the middle is mundane and is forgotten. And that's kind of how you look up a decade, however many period of years, and say, where did all the time go by? A huge part where he mentions those books specifically, though, is the same is true of your mental patterns. People usually tend to worry about the same problems, or at least the same type of problems in the same way over time, again and again and again. And the mind has ways of creating things like self-fulfilling prophecies where you don't really have any sort of growth, any real movement over the course of arguably an entire lifetime. So one of the major things one can do, according to Slight Edge, is to take the conscious time and put that towards the slight edge behaviors that you want to build up. And the nature of these sort of behaviors is that they're generally easy to do. The problem is that they're also very easy not to do. Like, let's say, because pretty much all the things that he ends up advocating are small starts, small habits that you build up over time. Imagine training a dolphin to jump through a hoop. How do you do that? Incrementally. You teach the dolphin to jump, give them a fish. Do they make it through the hoop the first time? Probably not. We want to train the behavior of jumping. And just gradually iterating from there. If you want to become, well, one of the things that he's really big about is just reading 10 pages from a book each day. That's how he develops his mind. And he argues that the whole point of education, the whole point of self-investment, is more than anything else to train how you think, so that when you get into these cycles, they're at the very least automating something productive, something that you actually want. So at the end of that, it's more than just, where the time go, it's, even if it's still where the time go, it's, hey, I have this beneficial result that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's worth looking into because it does go into more depth than that, but that's just the superficial sort of 10-minute review of it from there. So that's about it. I'll check in later.